Om Shanti, everyone, and welcome to Friday with Friends, another series of always interesting talks. Today's talk, very different from last week's, which was harmony and singing, and today is, the title we're playing around with is Quantum Yoga, the Science of Silence. And we're going to have Brother Koen from living in Naples, but maybe he'll give a little bit of his background when I turn it over to him to speak for a moment. But we'll start with this quote. When you think of the secrets of the universe, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's from Nikola Tesla, who before no one knew the name, but now everyone does. So let me introduce Brother Koen. Welcome. I saw your talk, like a month or two ago, and I was very impressed, and it really caught my attention. And I've been thinking about this all that time in terms of, I wanted to go a little more into that to discover more about that whole thing. So to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your experience is in being interested in this field.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I don't know if you want my life story, but when I was student age, I would say, I attended a seminar in London that kind of opened up my consciousness and made me realize that there's a lot more to me than just my body. And once I had that awakening, I was studying to be an engineer and ultimately a computer scientist. I also became interested in the Eastern philosophies, and then how Eastern philosophies and science kind of connected together. How did that work? Because there seemed to be a lot of conflict between science and religion and spirituality and that kind of thing. And I read a book by Fritjof Capra called The Art of Science, or the Spirituality of Science, something like that, the Science of Spirituality. And that really brought me into this field where they started talking about quantum physics and how that might actually be a scientific explanation for people who go through spiritual experiences and have this enlightenment experience, as it were. So that's really where my interest started. So it's been there for a large part of my life.
Well, because you find in the world, you have people on a spiritual path and people on a scientific path. And for a large amount of people, these two paths seems to diverge. But with this recent, I'd say in the past 30 years, interest in the quantum physics, that we see a coming towards rather than a going away. And what I have noticed is that some of the things that science is now saying is something that great spiritual teachers have been practicing or saying through allegory for a long time.
That's exactly right. And I think it's the conclusion ultimately, when we get to the bottom of all this, is that we're looking at the same thing, but just from a different point of view. So I think spirituality is very subjective. It's very subjective to your individual experience of it, while science is a more objective way of looking at things. Science is more based on, I have a theory of something, I formulate a hypothesis and I do some experiments. And if I can repeat those experiments by doing the same thing each time and I get the same results, then I can come to a conclusion and I can tell other people about that. And I would expect them to be able to achieve the same results if they do the same thing.
Absolutely. And so what I'd be looking for is, how can we have spirituality be in the same way as that it's becomes objective as well. And it's not just, this is my belief, that there's a truth behind it. And something you said about science being objective also brings in this idea of something that really hit me when I first heard it, is that at a subatomic level, that, atoms aren't really matter, but they're energy moving at a very fast speed, and kind of like they said, a vortex. So I looked up the word vortex, and all it is means whirlpool, a whirlpool of space, of energy. So it's going around all the time. And there's these bits, I think they're called quarks, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
They're so small that they are altered by the observation of them. So that when a scientist is looking into a high-powered microscope, he was affecting the anatomy of the atom by the observance of it. So it shows you how that, in a way, is also subjective, that my consciousness, my human consciousness, is affecting matter. Is this true?
Well, at the subatomic level, yes. What's interesting about what your introduction there is that, a few centuries ago, we had Isaac Newton. He came up with the laws of motion for planets that allowed us to predict where a planet would be at a certain time in our solar system. It allowed us to predict tides because of the position of the moon and things like that. And we started observing space a lot more. And, we realized that space, or the universe, is mainly space. And we've kind of figured that when we started to look at atoms at a micro scale, that it would behave in a very similar way. But because, everything around us is solid, we kind of imagine this atom to be this solid mass of stuff, whatever, quarks, particles. Quark is the smallest particles, I think, that we know, that we've discovered to date. That's where the word quark fits in. But what we really discovered is that an atom is a nucleus, very small, of course, with electrons circling around it at an incredibly high speed. But most of it is just like the universe, it's space.
Do you think it mimics? Do you think it matches space? Do you think it's the same all the way through, that the relationship between matter and space is constant on the macro and the micro?
I don't know if you can say that. All I can say is that at a subatomic level, it's all about energy, vibration. And if we could see fast enough, if we could see that vibration, then we'd be able to see the space. But we can't. It's just too small and too fast for us. So all we see is this physicalness.
Do you think
it becomes solid?
Just in a kind of a ballpark, in the relationship of solid and space, what is kind of the percentage? Is there much more space than matter?
Yeah, I mean, the space is, you're talking 99.9999% space.
So that automatically makes me think of applying that to myself, that even these bodies might be likewise, since we're made out of the same particles as everything else, that we're all space. And now here's another thought I want to throw into you too, is that this energy, that even matter is energy, yes? Mm-hmm. Is matter is energy? So is also thought energy as well?
Yes.
So then we are all the same thing, even the matter, the thought, everything we're all so intimately connected with everything in the universe. human beings, my thoughts, everything around me. And so we have such the ability, what I see is we have the ability to have such a profound effect on our environments by the way that we think.
That's absolutely right. And just to come back to that space thing, so I hate to break it to you and to any other man that's watching, but that stuff between your ears, it's mainly space.
Yeah. I really believe that. And so how I try to put everything into practical so I could use it in life, so it's not just a theory, is that I need my thoughts, likewise, I want them to be in the same type of alignment, that I would think of silence as being the space and my thoughts as being the matter. And so I only need 0.01 thoughts to make the system work well. And what causes the confusion in my life psychologically and in my relationships to people, relationships to the environment, is the overabundance of thoughts that I have that make me confused. Yeah, I think that I'm in a solid state, just like we used to think that when I went to school, it was a solid state universe. You know, everything, it just stayed this way. Of course, there's nothing like that. So it didn't work at all. So do you think there's some relationship there between the clarity of my thoughts and silence and space?
Yes, I think there's definitely a balance that we should strive for. And to your point, we know that, you know, the atoms and the electrons whizzing around atoms, they create an electromagnetic frequency. And you could see your thoughts, they are measurably also producing a frequency. And therefore, it's not too far-fetched to think that your thoughts are actually interacting with your surroundings, your environment at a quantum level.
And isn't this what like spiritual teachers have been getting across for a long period of time, that and the importance of cleanliness of the mind, not as which we talk as disciplines. You know, that a yogi has certain disciplines that they follow, and it has nothing at all to do with anything except being able to be more accurate in the thought process, so it becomes objective and not subjective, which would be morality. So in reality, it's not a belief system. It's a scientific process to rid my thought process of anything that's unnecessary in it, thereby happiness.
Yes, I think if you're completely consumed by thoughts, you return to a very subjective state of being where, you know, everything around you is pure solid. You get completely caught up in the illusion, which is really what it is. If everything is 99% space, but all I see is, you know, physical stuff, then really I'm living in an illusion. It's like a kind of a matrix, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
By techniques such as meditation, I can try and slow down those thoughts and create more space. And through that space, I can start living more in the present moment and become more aware of my interaction with the environment. And I do believe that will really induce a state of a peace of mind, which will then lead to a state of happiness. And you know, that to me, that whole interaction is something that ultimately you would be able to measure.
That's what I was thinking too. And one of the ways that we experience this measurement is in my peace of mind, my degree of happiness, that are results of the inner status quo. And it probably could even be mathematically accounted for by the degree of clutter in terms of thoughts in my mind creating a subjective and thereby inaccurate experience.
Right, that's exactly right. And just to come back to your point about observing, an atom changes it. So what's happening there is that the electron whizzing around the atom is really a waveform of probability as to where it exactly is at any particular point in time, which you can't really know accurately. But when you observe it, as that process of observation seems to collapse that waveform and give you a precise location of the electron. And that's kind of when it becomes more matter.
Ah.
And if that's true at a subatomic level for one atom, you know, you would also think that would be true for many atoms.
Okay, draw this out.
And that's where the whole idea of, well, you know, am I able to manifest my reality? And that's kind of one of those leaps where, you know, the scientific process is a very strict, arduous set of logical steps where you make an observation, you do an experiment, you can produce results, and et cetera, et cetera. To the observation that when you observe something, you are affecting the atom, that is a fact, you know, that has been proven. To then say that I could sit here and meditate and a Tesla will appear in my garage tomorrow morning.
That's quite a leap. Yeah.
That's a bit of a leap. And, you know, the proof is in the pudding.
So it's an increment. See, but the logic and theory is sound, is it not?
Yes. And I think to bring that into your life, you need to go step by step and start to have the belief and the intention of some change in your life that you would like to see, and then, you know, try and objectively see if that's really happening.
Well, you see so many seminars and things that you could buy into that teach you how to visualize your potential, find the giant within, many, many things. It's all based upon this scientific principle. Even though they thought it was a subjective thing, it's not really subjective. It's working the science kind of in a somewhat haphazard way that we don't really know because we're only going a step at a time. And again, it makes me think of the disciplines necessary for the spiritual scientist. The reason for them is to keep me on track in a step-by-step process, because I can't be spinning my wheels in one direction while going off in another direction. So
that's right.
Cleanliness is number one. I have to make sure my laboratory is free of any germs or anything that's not part of the process that might infiltrate or compromise my experiment.
That's right.
It's really amazing, isn't it?
You could look at it like a laser is a beam of light where all the light waves are in coherence, and therefore it's a very powerful beam and it can reach a long way. And you could say it's pure. It's a pure form of light. And your thoughts, you know, in a way are the same. Is the more space you can create in between your thoughts, the more you can clean your thoughts up, the more they become like a laser light beam, and you have much more chance of actually connecting and penetrating that quantum field that's out there.
So I'm thinking, you know, in terms of myself, what is it that prevents me from having laser-like consciousness? So
nothing.
Yeah. So exactly, except my own realization that I have this power, because we see ourselves as being just on the surface, but in reality, I'm a creator, because part of this whole process of quantum physics is the observer is also the creator. I begin to create my reality through my observation, the act of observation. So if I can clean and empower my observational powers, meaning my concentration of thought, I can begin to manifest those things which I have desire for.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
And, you know, just to give that a context, what's interesting and what this is probably, if you ask me, what is the most exciting thing that is happening right now in the world? And I would say it's this, you know, quantum awareness that we are discovering, and how can I apply the quantum to my own life, to my own being? You're probably aware we are now in an era of incredible innovation that is happening. We've got electric vehicles coming. We've got artificial intelligence that are ultimately going to power those electric vehicles and make them drive by themselves. How wonderful that would be.
Yes.
We have robotics where, you know, many processes are becoming automated. We have the study of the gene, the genomics, where companies are now able to splice genes and do gene therapy to actually heal a fault in a gene that makes somebody sick, which is phenomenal. And then we also have the fintech, the financial technology revolution that's happening through the blockchain and cryptocurrency and all that. I think that's going to have a major impact in the next 10 years. And we also have 3D printing, where, you know, you can actually print things and start manufacturing things incredibly quickly of all kinds of materials. But if you ask me what is the most exciting of all the innovations, it's bringing quantum into our daily life and applying it. And to me, that's all about measuring the results, you know, measuring how is this changing my life. And just to give a bit of history on that, to give that context I was talking about, if you look at science, science is like a pyramid. At the base of that pyramid, you have mathematics. Mathematics is like the basis of everything. On top of that, you have physics, which is the study of structures and you know, atoms and how they move and change in the world. On top of physics, you then have chemistry, which is a study of how do atoms interact with each other. And then the peak is biology, which is life, the study of life and medicine. Now, quantum physics happened 100 years ago, and we've seen a complete revolution in mathematics. We've seen a complete revolution in physics and in chemistry. But guess what? Where has the revolution been in medicine and our healing process, for instance? I mean, there have been tremendous breakthroughs, obviously, but not at a quantum level. And so, you know, included in this manifestation is of great interest to, I'm sure, each and every one of us, is the ability to use quantum physics to heal ourselves. Is if I can change the external environment, why can't I change my internal environment and transform that?
This is my very point. And as you were mentioning all these great revolutions that are going on, the tremendous speed of change that is going on, like what's happening now in 1 year is what used to happen in 100 years. Would you say that's fair to say?
Yeah.
Now, just turn that around. In order to maintain balance, my consciousness has to keep up with this rate. And that is biology, isn't it? Because that's on a healing level. So the ability to self-heal through understanding, I mean, this is all on the table as far as I can see, is that this is where quantum will go. Quantum healing really means I'm healing myself through changing the consciousness that created it in the first place, because it all starts, probably, I'm sure it does, it all starts with consciousness. It's exactly. Go ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the whole thing about the observer affecting the atom is really the consciousness of the living being. And it's our consciousness that has that connection. And therefore it is our consciousness that can turn inwards and start creating miracles at a genetic level.
That's right. From our, I would call primitive point of view, it seems like magic and miracles, but it's just reality. It's that I'm finally, mankind has an opportunity to catch up with reality that it before just called magic or spirituality. It's just a reality.
That's exactly right. So 100 years ago, if you showed somebody an aircraft flying through the air with people in it, that would have been pure magic.
Pure magic.
But now we know that it's because of the shape of the wings and the airflow that accelerates on top of that wing. It creates a vacuum, which creates a pressure underneath the wing, and it lifts it.
Yeah.
And there's a scientific explanation. So all these magical experiences and miraculous healings that have taken place, we will get to a point where that is scientifically completely explainable and logical, and the answer was there in front of us all the time. It's called quantum.
I see it as critically important for us to understand the power that our consciousness has, is because it can become either a great tool or a great weapon. And if a monkey is given a weapon, it's not a good thing, And so we're probably at a critical point in man's history that the change is going so fast that it's not just nice that it would happen, it's mandatory, necessary, absolutely necessary that we alter our consciousness now. Fair enough to say?
Yes, absolutely right. And it's, consciousness can be, that power could be used for good or for evil. And I don't know what the moral imperative is here. If there's some intelligence that is, preventing somebody with evil intentions to not manifest, where someone with good intentions can manifest. I don't know if that's there, but I would think that it's true to say that somebody who has lots of space between their thoughts, has very clear thoughts, is in touch with the incredible miracle that's going on around us every moment in time. Somebody who reaches that level cannot be evil.
True. Because
I think that realization of
it won't work.
Such that they can see the ultimate, the good, and you just don't get to that level. If you are evil, I think your mind is utterly cluttered and there's no space.
It would be more solid. See, yes. So the morality is good and evil, but the science is space and solid. That we want to go towards space, and space is related to cleanliness, and in consciousness, to cleanse my consciousness just means to remove that which is unnecessary. It's just a scientific thing. I have to clean over and over. And then the innate, you could call it divinity, really, which is something being in its true, its purest state, my original state, my divine state of me, of you, of everything that goes on. Anything that has consciousness has a perfect state. And so that's what we're going towards.
Right.
I don't know how much time we have left, just a couple of minutes. So if you have a last thing that you'd like to say, and then we'll close with a meditation.
Mhm. Well, I just wanted to mention a very important experiment that was done by a PhD, Dr. Elizabeth Targ. She did an experiment on the effect of remote healing back in the 80s, and she collected a group of all different people from different ethnic origins, different religions, different spiritualities, different modalities. And they did an scientifically, rigorously conducted experiment of healing people with AIDS in a hospital in San Francisco. And they divided them in two groups. They did a double-blind study where nobody in the two groups knew which group they were in. And the healers didn't know who they were healing. They were just given a picture and a name. And they started to do that thing, you know, prayer, shining light, beating a drum, thinking positive thoughts, you know, whatever they were into. And then they conducted studies as to what the results were for each group. And the group that had the healing had fewer T cells, so that they were generally feeling better. They had less visits to a hospital, and they had fewer deaths occur. So it was absolutely proven beyond doubt and beyond, you know, the chance of something like that happening, that healing worked. So we know scientifically that the remoteness of the quantum, and the only explanation that I can think of is that you are physically shining light when you are in that healing mode.
So
And
again, go ahead.
That experience, I think, is at the root of everything, is that you absorb light from the quantum, and you have the ability and the gift, it's an incredible gift, to shine that light onto anybody and anything and any living being. And I think the more you do that, the more empowered you will feel and the more light you will receive. And it's infinite. There is no limit to the amount of light that you can really pass through. Because that's what you're doing, is you're passing that light. And I think that's the greatest gift that you can give.
It's profound. You know, it really, and so it's actually very inspiring as well. It's inspiring for me to see what it is in me that's clutter, and say, well, I'd rather be a light spreader than a clutter giver. You know, I don't want to keep giving my inheritance to be cluttered. Let me share the light that I have within me. It's very powerful.
And I think it's powerful also to the extent that, you know, I can take a half an hour and sit in a quiet room and meditate and really try and focus on that. But what about the rest of the day? Am I then going back into the clutter? And I think if I can be aware and remember that I am a light conduit, if you will, and I go around in nature, and every living thing I see, every plant, every tree, I give them light. Every human being, every animal, I just shine my light on them. Then I'm in a profound state of meditation all day long. If I can remember just to do that.
It's also science. You see,
yes.
That's the meeting of science and spirituality right there. And I think that's a beautiful place for us to pause. And let's put it into practice. I'll put on some music, and I'll offer a commentary kind of based on what we're saying. And you shine your light, you know, because it doesn't even matter. See, Zoom is kind of like the training wheels of this quantum process.
Right.
That we're remote and we're wireless, but we still have the facility of seeing. But if I really have it, I could develop the ability to see you or to experience you without any of these facilities. Is this a possibility?
Well, I think it could be, yes.
Yes. Well, it's a
You-
leap
we have-
again.
we have,
We're leaping.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I'll put a little music on. And let's just take a couple deep breaths just to bring the inner and the outer closer together. And as I take a final exhale here while thinking about it, I just let go of the clutter. I let go of the clutter because it feels so good. And I recognize how much I love space. We call this space silence. If the universe is 99.9% space, that means it's 99.9% silence. It feels good. And in order for me to develop this light, this laser-like light that could share and give light to everything I come in contact with, I need to be able to see, and I need silence. So I turn my attention inward and just observe. What I see in the silence is the anatomy of the silence. And this is pure thoughts, good wishes, and the language of the eyes. So much can be communicated just through connecting vision from one being to another. The clarity of my good wishes shines. That's why we say things like, I've seen the light, or there's a light radiating in the center of the forehead. This is the symbol of pure thoughts, because I recognize how valuable, how important, how necessary it is for me now to experience these pure thoughts. It automatically turns into the good wishes for others because we're so deeply connected. I treasure this. I treasure my connection, my pure connection with others. And a word need not be said. It's not sentimental. It's not nostalgic. It's the language of the eyes, whether it be a fellow human being, a cat, or a houseplant, even stone. All things can absorb the energy of the light that I am shining. I see this. I know this. I experience this. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
It seems easy at that moment, doesn't it? And so just, I treasure the opportunity to connect with you in this way about something so profound. It's a long-lasting impression. Thank you so much for your generosity of your knowledge. I appreciate it.
It's completely my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So be well. Have a wonderful day. And we'll see you next time, Friday with Friends. Thank you, Koen. Bye.